Good evening, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started at 6:30, and I know some people may have places to go. I want to thank everyone for coming out who did come. I know it's a pretty nice evening outside, so a lot of people probably had other things they wanted to do, but I like to think that the people that showed up are the important people, so that's my philosophy. Like I said, welcome to the Johnson County Board of Supervisors Candidates Forum, hosted by Iowa City Federation of Labor and the Coalition for Racial Justice. Iowa City Federation of Labor, to give you a brief description of who we are and what we do. We're a coalition of about 22 unions that represent Johnson and Washington County, and we strive to fight in our community for social and economic justice. That's our main goals, and I think we do a pretty good job of it. The co-host is Coalition for Racial Justice. The Coalition for Racial Justice is a group of Johnson County residents seeking to end racism and promote racial justice policies and practices within elected bodies in Johnson County. So I'd like to thank them for co-hosting this with us. To get into the program, like I said, again, my name is Greg Hearns. I'm the president of Iowa City Federation of Labor. Back in the back is Sarah Barron from Coalition of Racial Justice. Each candidate is going to get an opportunity to introduce themselves. There's going to be 1 minute allowed for that introduction. We're going to have a timekeeper in the back, Zach Peterson. So if there's not any questions. The only ground rules I would like to impose is that no applause in between the speakers. We can save that till the end. That way we can get through it in a timely manner. First off, I'd like to have the candidates introduce themselves. You have 1 minute. I'll start with Mike Carberry.
Thanks, Greg, and thanks to the Federation of Labor and the Coalition for Racial Justice for hosting this forum. My support for labor goes back many years, but after I was endorsed by CityFed in 2014, I had the ability to prove my support as soon as I was elected to the Board of Supervisors. With my election, there were now 3 votes to pass the minimum wage ordinance. We passed that and set a standard for all county employees. Over 160 companies have now pledged to continue paying the minimum wage. With my vote, the board has also passed community ID, support newcomers, and welcome them to our community. I fought to preserve the collective bargaining for public employees, and when that ended, I voted to extend the county bargaining units contracts for 2 election cycles. I supported project labor agreements and cut the discrepancy in the state and federal highway swap at the MPO that would have taken away Davis-Bacon protections. I am serving on the local board of the NAACP and want to continue efforts to fight disproportionate minority contact and support the Welcome County initiative by our sheriff to cooperate with federal immigration officials only under court order. These efforts continue our work towards inclusiveness that values the skills and contributions of all people. Johnson County needs the efforts of all of its people to succeed. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mike. Pat?
Yes. I'm Pat Heiden, and it is a pleasure to be here tonight. I, too, want to thank the Iowa City Federation of Labor and the Coalition for Racial Justice for hosting this forum. I would like to begin by sharing a little bit about myself. I was born and raised on a dairy farm in western Iowa, but Johnson County is my home. It has been my home for more than 40 years. I raised my 2 daughters here as a single mom, and I spent my entire professional career in Johnson County, retiring from Oak Knoll Retirement Residence in 2016 after 36 years of service, the last 21 years as its executive director. As an employee and employer, I was not directly involved in labor unions during my professional career. As the director of Oak Knoll, my management team and I were committed to creating an environment and culture that supported and valued the employee and the work he or she did. Our goal was to be the employer of choice in our field, and we strive to pay the highest wages and good benefits, including retirement plan. Employees had a voice in how their work was done, and if there was an issue, it was the staff closest to the problem and most affected who would recommend solutions. We encouraged skill and professional development, and scholarships were available for employees who wanted to continue their education. Most importantly, we celebrated successes and supported each other in trying and difficult times. It is my pleasure to be here tonight, and I look forward to the conversation.
All right. Thank you, Pat. Janelle?
I'm Janelle Rettig. I'm in my second term as a member of the Board of Supervisors. I've been in Iowa City, Johnson County for 28 years. Like many people, we came here for graduate school and then never left. I've worked for the Illinois Legislature of the United States Congress. I've owned a business. I served on boards and commissions at the city, county, and state level all at the same time. I've been very passionate about everything that the board has been able to accomplish in the last few years, 8 years since I've been there. My spouse, Robin Butler, is a member of ASME, and I am a member of the nonprofit Teamsters arm, Team Can. Labor and civil rights justice is in our blood. We've been doing civil rights work since forever. We've won several civil rights awards, both from the community and from the city of Iowa City. It's very important to me that working people and people that are being discriminated against have voices in government. And so I really look forward to your questions. I'm excited to be here. And thanks to the sponsors. I hope we get into a lot of details and we have a lot of time to talk about it. The early voting's already started and the primary is on June 5th. And I'd appreciate your consideration for your vote.
All right, thank you, candidates. Next, we're going to have a series of questions that were put together by Iowa City Federation of Labor and the Coalition of Racial Justice. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to speak on the question. If you need the question repeated when it's your turn to speak, just feel free to ask and I'll repeat that for you. I'll start out with Pat this time. The first question is, talk about permissive subjects of bargaining and how county supervisors can be supportive.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Sure. Talk about permissive subjects of bargaining and how county supervisors can be supportive.
Well, I think it's very, very important for the county supervisors to be supportive. I think, we're facing and have a climate on the state and national levels where we need to continue to do the right thing. And it is just incredible that Chapter 20 was dissolved. And first and foremost, we need to look forward to continue the effort to reinstate that. In the meantime, we need to do the right thing in everything that we do as managers and be sure that we support the workers and the environment that they are working in.
All right, thank you. Janelle?
So after the last general election, ASME, our business agent for our locals of ASME that work for the county, called actually Supervisor Rod Sullivan and asked if the county would be interested in extending our union contracts. and we were excited to do that and happy to do that. So we extended all 6 of our union contracts through ASME 3 through PPME out through 2 more general elections. So for us right now, the mandatory permissive debate is not an issue. Should we not be able to take back the legislature and change what they did to Chapter 20, I believe we should negotiate just as if the original Chapter 20 was in place and negotiate on all the permissive topics also. What happened was just terrible, and the needing to re-vote every time before a contract. I hope we can reverse that in the next 2 general elections, but if we don't, I am happy to keep the same topics we've always had and even add topics of negotiation. That would be fine with me.
All right, thank you, Janelle. Mike?
No, thanks, Greg. Chapter 20 got repealed. I went to Des Moines a couple different times and rallied against that. It didn't happen. Elections have consequences, and the party that I belong to and the party the 3 of us and all of us probably here belong to is out of power, so a lot of things were done to punish us, including labor. There is a difference between permissive and prohibited. I think that, and I'm glad that we extended those 6 bargaining units through 2 election cycles. And hopefully, because elections do have consequences, hopefully the blue wave will overtake what's in Des Moines this fall in November, and we'll be able to reinstate the Chapter 20 and collective bargaining so one of the things that I'm I'm sorry, I'm messing up here a little bit, but I just think that the elections do have consequences. We fought, we lost, now we need to fight at the ballot box and move forward. So,
All right, thank you, Mike.
yeah, thanks.
All right, the next question for the candidates is, and I'll start with Janelle. Please explain your personal philosophy on the proper role of government.
I believe government has I have 2 minutes, right? I could do it this way. I believe government has a very important role in society. If you've ever traveled and you've seen where there's dysfunctional government, you will know the difference. Everything from our roads to our water to our garbage. In our case, mental health, disabilities, public health. Imagine if you didn't have food inspections. Imagine what society would be like if there was no organization, if there was no public education, that every time someone wanted to do anything, they had to pay for it. If you wanted, pay for your own road to your own house. And so government has a tremendous role in organizing us, helping us achieve things that we can only achieve together and not singularly. And it also is a social safety net. Many people across the country and in our county, poverty rates are growing tremendously. There are 19,000 people food insecure in Johnson County. Many counties in Iowa don't even have 19,000 people, and we have 19,000 people who don't know where they're going to eat tomorrow. And so government has a tremendous role, and I have never been afraid to say when county government can be part of it and when we can't do it alone. Unfortunately, with what's going on with both the state and federal government and the dysfunction that's happening, that they are not upholding their end of the bargain. And the county government and city governments and even school districts are being asked to do more and more and more and not have the resources to do that. But I think government has a role in every part of our lives in a way, except for our bedrooms and our healthcare decisions. I think government has a tendency to, what's happened in the state in the last few weeks is just shameful. And many young women will be leaving our state because of it or choosing not to come here. And so I do think government has a role in providing services and being a safety net. I do not think they should interfere in our personal responsibilities and choices.
All right, thank you, Janelle. Mike?
Well, I believe that government is good in the long run and at every level, at your city, your county, your state, and your federal government. But we have seen at the state and federal level what deregulation has done, and and then greed rules. There was a movie that said greed is good. I don't believe that greed is good. I believe that government is good, and that government is there to lift the people up that need lifting up, that need a hand up and not a hand out. And so I've always believed that in public service. I believe in local government, especially because it's closer to the people than any other government. And so that's the city and the county. But when we get unfunded mandates by the state and federal government, it's harder and harder for us to do good work. And then we end up having to pay for things that should have been paid for by the state government or the federal government. And unfortunately, then we have to raise taxes to provide those goods and services. And of course, people say, oh my God, look how bad government is. But that's not the case. And so I will go back to elections have consequences, and that we need to change who sits up at the State House. We need to change who sits in the governor's office, who represents us in Congress. We need to be represented by Democrats at every level. And those are the people that actually believe in the government. They're not the people that want to shrink it down to government down to the size that it can be drowned in a bathtub, or as the T-shirt that I saw Amy Nielsen wear the other day, to shrink government down to the size that it fits inside a vagina. So government is good. We need to keep good government, and I think that we have good government here at the county level.
All right, thank you, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
Pat?
Yes. I too believe government plays an important role. And, as I think of what's going on nationally and every day there's something different. And more close to home on the state level, the county government really plays a significant role. With the decreased resources on the state level and increased need in the county, it certainly is very significant as we go forward. You know, whether that's mental health or social services or, you know, the whole quality of life on a county level, the roads, air, water quality. Yep, it absolutely plays a significant role as we define our way of life here in the county.
All right, thank you, Pat. We'll start with Mike on the next question. Candidates for supervisor often campaign on the notion of being a candidate for all of Johnson County. What did this mean to you?
I love Johnson County. Johnson County has almost 150,000 people in it, and I've always had an open door policy. Our phone number and my email is published on our website. I'm very available on social media. I listen to everybody in the county. That doesn't mean I agree with everybody in the county. I was elected as a Democrat to put forward Democratic values. And I often hear from people that disagree with those. And they say, "You're not listening to me." And I said, "I am listening to you. I just don't happen to agree with you." And I was elected on this set of values, and that's the values that I will put forward into policy. And so some people don't like that. And so whether that's supporting labor, supporting racial justice, social justice, economic justice, there's certain people that don't want to see that. And so they think that, they say, "You're not listening to us. You're not listening to us." And I said, "Yeah, we are listening to you. We just don't agree with you." And so I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You know, if you don't like the way that we're governing, vote us out of office. You know, I'm sorry if you don't agree with me. Doesn't mean that you're wrong, doesn't mean that you're a bad person, and doesn't mean that I'm a bad person because I don't agree with you. I just have different values and I believe in a different way of governing. So that's what that means to me.
Thanks, Mike. Pat?
The last year and a half, I have been traveling around the county talking with people, and one thing I know for sure is that, first of all, the county is very, very large, and there are a lot of different needs and wants of the people in Johnson County. First and foremost, the farmers. It's a big ag county, and we need to embrace the farmers. I've been to all the city council meetings, and what I've learned is that Lone Tree is worried about losing its school, worried about residential development. They are just petrified about losing the school and have been reaching out to the supervisors for help there. Tiffin, which again is very different than Lone Tree, they're trying to continue that thoughtful growth that they've just experienced these last few years. And Solon, for example, is becoming a town of destination, you know, almost like a tourist town. But they're all very, very different. And what we need to be sure is that they feel like they've been heard and not marginalized. And that's something that we need to be very, very aware of, because they feel like they haven't been heard and they have been marginalized. What's very, very important is that everyone needs to have a voice at the table. And my experience at Oakland was that we weren't going to get along all the time, but we had a voice, and we would sit down and sometimes agree on what we could agree on and then move forward, so that no one felt like a winner or loser, but felt that they've been heard and that the best decision for the collective whole was reached.
Thanks, Pat. Janelle?
Johnson County has about 150,000 people, many of which who are activists and engaged, and which means we have about 150,000 opinions on almost every issue. And I mean, one of the roles I think of a supervisor is to cast a wide net, hear a lot of voices, listen to a lot of things, do their homework, study hard, and try not to make up their mind until the public hearings are over and until all the input is over. And in the end, a supervisor still has to make a vote, and almost every vote you're going to upset a group of people. It's just a given. It is not possible to make everyone happy, it's particularly not possible to make everyone happy in such a engaged and thoughtful county. And so, you know, I think that being a supervisor for all of Johnson County means you cast a wide net, you hear a lot of voices, you do your homework, and you are not, you do not make up your mind until the issue is considered, or try not to, so that new voices can be heard and possibly we can learn stuff and change our opinion or tweak things and be involved. But I think sometimes that phrase is meant to divide us into rural versus urban or Republicans versus Democrats. And I think that's unfortunate because I don't see the county that way. I've never asked anyone where they lived or what party they were before answering the phone or talking with them or meeting with them. I meet with people all the time, and sometimes they'll start, well, you won't want to hear from me, I'm a Republican. I'm like, I could care less what party you are. And so I think it's important to have supervisors that are out and about. I mean, I probably do 15 events a week in the summer, and that is important to hear a lot of voices and see a lot of people and be accessible. So I'm being shut off.
All right, thanks, Janelle. Next question, we'll start with Pat. How would your current and/or former employees describe you as a boss?
That's a great question. I think that they would describe me as someone who. Let me backtrack. First of all, I defined my success at Oaknall by just two things. One, I hired exceptional people that knew what they were experts in, and then I let them do what they knew how to do, and I supported them, and I mentored them, and I respected them, and they knew I was always there for them, but I wasn't going to second-guess decisions that had been made. Throughout my career, what I really found out was if they made a decision that I really didn't agree with, it was really me that didn't provide all the information that I had so that they could make a good decision. I think that they would say that I encouraged them. I wanted them to be the best that they could be, and sometimes that meant that maybe they didn't stay at Oaknall, and we supported that, and again encouraged them. Always they had a voice at the table, and they were listened to, and they were heard, and they were validated in everything that they did.
Thank you, Pat. Janelle?
It depends on which employees. You know, there are over 550 some odd county employees, and over the years I've had employees. Some of our employees I've had in the past are really good friends and have remained so, even though we've left those jobs. But I'll tell a story. When I first became a supervisor, a person who is now a department head said to me after the meeting, he's like, I'm going to have to do my homework a lot more because you ask difficult questions. And you just don't take for granted what's presented to you. You want to know more details. And it's important to me. I believe that it's my role to ask hard questions, to play devil's advocate, to expect high-quality service. It's my role to mentor. It's my role to help develop staff. And in certain circumstances, it's our role to discipline. And that's never particularly easy. And, you know, I think the board in general tries to give employees the benefit of the doubt. And we've upset a lot of elected officials and department heads because we've sided with the employees when they didn't want us to. But I think in general that I have high expectations and people know that they can talk to me. My door is open, and I often hear from people and get text messages in the middle of the night about stuff going on. And so I think that I think I have a pretty good relationship with the people that I work with most closely with.
All right, thank you, Janelle. Mike?
No, thanks, Greg. I would say that most people would consider me friendly and easy to get along with. There's a gentleman sitting in the second row here that said that two of the most important jobs of the county supervisor is the budget and hiring good department managers. And I think that we've hired some good department managers. And I'm the kind of supervisor for them that makes sure that we do hire good department managers and then give them the resources they can to do their job well. I'm a listener. I'm not a micromanager. I'm not a bully. I'm a good decision maker, and I evaluate the entire situation. I like to look at things at a 30,000-foot level and then drill down. So part of that is that you look at the big picture first, and then you drill down into the minutia, and you make a good decision based on the facts and what's going on. And so I think I'm a good manager. And I think that the employees and the department heads of Johnson County would back me up on that.
All right, thank you, Mike. The next question, we'll start with
It's me.
Janelle. What is your opinion of the 2015 effort to raise the minimum wage in Johnson County?
Well, the Teamsters offered to come get me on RAGBRAI and drive me back so I could attend it was the only time, basically all summer, we could have a work session on it. So they offered to come get me west of Waterloo, and I arranged to use the city hall so that I could call into the meeting. It was important to me that the minimum wage have an inflation index. It's the easiest, quote, controversial vote I've ever made in my life. It was an honor to raise minimum wage. The board has been considered heroes. We've been given awards even from Iowa City Federation of Labor. We don't deserve any awards. The people who are working 3 jobs to try to squeak by deserve all the hero awards. It was a pleasure to raise minimum wage. We had a lot of public input. We had public hearings. We engaged, the cities were asked to raise it originally and turned it down. We kept them informed of what we were doing. It was important for me to have it be an inflation indexed. The state government has decided to micromanage local government and to take away local control, but they won't be in power forever. And so we're raising minimum wage again on July 1st to $10.27, which will be our first inflation. I hope the employers follow it. I appreciate City Fed and CWJ's work in going out and asking employers to follow the minimum wage. I am very proud to be a county that led this discussion and caused other counties to follow us. And we'll get power back and we'll raise minimum wage statewide, hopefully after November.
Thanks, Janelle. Mike?
Well, I was very proud to be the third and deciding vote on raising the minimum wage. When I was running for office 4 years ago, Supervisor Rod Sullivan, when I started talking about raising the minimum wage, he told me to shut up because he didn't want me to let the cat out of the bag, because there was a plan to do that. And I didn't know about that plan because I wasn't in the inner circle at that point. But he said, yeah, we're going to do this, but we have to wait till the legislature gets out of session, because if they get wind that we're going to raise it to 10.10, they might raise it 50 cents or $1 or something like that, which is definitely not enough. So I ran on it. I was the third and deciding vote. It's a reality that not all Democrats are cut from the same cloth, that there's Democrats that will support this, and there's Democrats that won't. I was the third Democrat then elected that would support this minimum wage. Index inflation was very important to me, and we've recently announced on April 1st that we'll be raising the minimum wage 17 cents to $10.27. I'm proud to work with the Center for Worker Justice in contacting over 160 different companies that have decided to pay the county minimum wage. They have courage to do that. They don't have to do that. It was very disappointing that they preempted our ability to enforce the minimum wage, but we move forward nonetheless. Again, elections have consequences. I will continue to fight for that. And, one of the criticisms we got was that it wasn't a livable wage. And I said, well, if $15 is a livable wage, you have to go through 10.10 to get to it. So I said, we're working towards a livable wage. And I have been one of the leaders of the Fight for 15 campaign in the state, and I'm proud of what we've done.
Thank you, Mike. Pat?
Yes. Obviously, I absolutely support the increase in the minimum wage, and everyone working full-time should be earning a livable wage. It's a basic human right. This is another example that if public policy will not support a uniform minimum wage, then we need to find creative ways to get done what we know is the right thing to do, and that's just what the county did. I applaud the businesses who voluntarily increased their wages and congratulate the Center for Worker Justice for all the leadership in this process. In 2015, when the minimum wage was increased, of course I was still at Oak Knoll, and that did not affect Oak Knoll at all. All our wages were already above that increase. When it was increased again in 2016, it did affect one department, and that was the housekeeping department. And of course, we increased the wages. So I think that's very important for you to know, in that day-to-day at Oak Knoll, we wanted to be the employer of choice, and part of being an employer of choice, not only with a wonderful workplace, but also good livable wages.
Thank you, Pat. The next question will start with Mike. Do you support fair share legislation, and why or why not?
Well, I believe that it is the right of all workers to organize, and I believe that collective bargaining is a right of all workers, and that they should, regardless of whether they are paying dues or not, that they should be able to be represented by the collective bargaining unit. And I actually believe that they really should be able to force them to pay those dues in order to participate in what has been collectively bargained by the bargaining unit. So labor has been the defining issue, or the defining group of the middle class. It has built the middle class, and we need to keep unions strong. So we need to do everything that we possibly can to keep unions stronger, and to keep moving forward and increase the earning value of the middle class.
Thanks, Mike. Pat?
Well, so I made it 35 minutes before I got stumped on a question. I want to say two things. One is that, I'm not a spontaneous person, so this is just really incredible for me to be doing this, and I'm really enjoying the discussion. But the other thing, I'm going to be honest and forthright with you also, because I'm not sure what you're referring to as far as fair share. If that's a right to work, I can address that, but otherwise I'm going to have to pass on this and look forward to continuing that learning curve going forward.
All right, thanks, Pat. Janelle?
Yes. Okay, I still get 2 minutes. So. Yes, I support fair share. My spouse, I said, is a member of ASME, and she's a member, and they were having some problems in their office, and they're a pretty professional office, and ASME doesn't necessarily go around asking people to join. And so there are very few people, even at the county, that are members of the union. And her colleagues were upset about stuff, and I said, tell them to join the union and then talk to them. Because the union will represent them at the bargaining table and grievances and et cetera. And it simply isn't fair for people to benefit from that and not pay their fair share of the cost of that. And so but the other answer is we're not running for the legislature, and so
Right.
It's not really a question we deal with. But I think in our administrative union at the county, we only have 4 members currently. And I think part of that is because the supervisors are so pro-worker that they don't feel the need to join. But on the other hand, the union has to function, and they have to pay their business agents. So the long and short answer is I support fair share.
Thank you. The next question will start with Pat. What are your thoughts on project labor agreements?
I absolutely support them 100%. I think, they defined not only for any project, not only prevailing wage, benefits, work conditions, and, it's just really very, very important to define all of that so that we can, and safety and OSHA, it's absolutely imperative that again, with the climate that we're in now, that we embrace that in anything that we do.
Thanks, Pat. Janelle?
I am a strong supporter of project labor agreements. I helped propose both of them that the county's been able to do on our West Campus fleet building and at the ambulance medical examiner. It's the ultimate buy local. And the government is required to take the lowest responsive bid. The problem is the responsible part is not very well defined in Iowa code. And so it's really hard to turn down a bid. And so PLAs allowed us to define upfront what we expected as far as training, as far as insurance, as far as liability, and as far as local workers. They could hire workers from outside, but you had to go to the union to hire more. And it was a balancing. And so the two PLAs the county have done were wonderful. Now that it's taken away from us, for temporarily, I hope, I've been talking with the building trades about other options, and they believe we can build into our bid documents some things to replace some of the PLAs. And I brought that to the board's attention recently, and everybody said, absolutely, let's get the information and see what we can do. The buyer should have some rights here, even if the buyer is the government. And it, the former mayor of Cedar Rapids wasn't necessarily for PLAs because he was pro-labor. He was for PLAs because it's good for your local economy. And so I'm for them for all of the reasons, but the local economy is a good one. The building trades are having a lot of problems right now where subcontractors don't even have insurance of any kind, and no workman's comp is being paid on them because they're considering them independent contractors. We have a lot more work to do, and I hope we get PLAs back, but otherwise, let's do whatever else we can.
All right, thanks, Janelle. Mike?
Yeah, I definitely support PLAs. I supported the two projects that the county did with PLAs, the secondary roads fleet facility and also our ambulance medical examiner facility were built with PLAs. A lot of times prevailing wage is the key issue here on PLAs. Are they paying prevailing wage? And if they are, that means that they're probably a union shop, and that gives all the protections that unions afford to workers. One of the things that what I did, I sit on the board of the Metropolitan Planning Organization, and they offered something called the State Federal Highway Fund Swap, and it was going to. They said it's going to save us money, and I said, oh, I know what this is. This is a sneaky way to stop paying prevailing wage, and it's also basically it's like a PLA, but it's allows them to go with state funds instead of federal funds. They don't have to pay Davis-Bacon prevailing wage. They don't have to do environmental review. They don't have to do architectural review. They don't have to buy American. It's basically not a good deal for American workers or for local workers. So I led the fight to defeat that. And we actually had Republicans that sat on the board of the MPO that voted against that swap. So I thank Bill Gerhard and the state building trades. After I contacted them, I gave them the names of all of the elected officials that they should contact, and we won that on an overwhelming vote. And so the PLAs, I'm very strong and supportive of. Actually, when they were trying to remove those, that was another thing that I went to Des Moines to rally against. So I'm a big supporter of PLAs. I hope we get them back.
Thank you, Mike. The next question, we'll start with Janelle. What are your thoughts on tax increment financing, better known as TIFs, and the way it has been used in Johnson County?
I think TIFs, tax increment financing, are a very valuable tool for local government. I don't want to see TIFs done away with. but I do think they've been abused and overused in our area. And there needs to be limits on either, there's a variety of ways to do it, but for language, but for this tax increment financing, the project couldn't happen. That it is a percentage, or that they always should have sunsets. And that the total debt in TIFs has some mathematical formulas so that government cannot get so financially out of balance that they have difficulty paying back those loans. And so I don't want to see TIFs go away, but I definitely think there needs to be TIF reform. And there are a variety of ways to do that. I've listed some of them. There are others that I'm short on time on. Starting to where I can't see you anymore. But I don't want, I mean, there have been some talk about ending TIFs, and I think that would be a mistake. TIFs were started for housing and urban renewal, and TIFs could be better utilized for low-income housing. And that's one thing we haven't done a lot of in our area. We've done things for workforce housing, but the workforce housing is more expensive than the house I live in. And so I do think we need statewide TIF reform, and I've lobbied for that. I've been part of organizing for that, and we'll need to discuss it more.
All right, thanks, Janelle. Mike?
I support the limited use of tax increment financing, or TIF. TIF was created for basically two reasons: to build in blighted areas that without the TIF it would never have been done, and then also for economic development. I think the economic development portion of TIF has overwhelmed the blight area of TIF. And we have seen some TIF abuse locally and statewide. I think that certain communities have used TIF too much. We have entire towns in Johnson County that are TIF districts. Janelle mentioned the but-for language and sunsets. I agree with that. But the main thing is that TIF takes away a lot of money from both the county and from schools. And it raises the taxes in other areas where that TIF district isn't even located. And the Iowa Policy Project has done some wonderful research on this, and I've seen some of the numbers that I pay in increased taxes as a resident of Johnson County for some of the other TIFs within the county. And that, they used to say that was taxation without representation, and that probably is true. And so, maybe would we do, I don't want to get rid of TIFs, but I think that they need to be reformed. And sometimes maybe the people that are affected by that TIF, maybe they should get a say in whether that TIF moves forward or not.
All right, thanks, Mike. Pat?
I do support the responsible use of TIF. It is one way a city or county can use those dollars for economic development. For example, I would support proposed projects whose main component is affordable housing, or an economic development project that increases property taxes, thereby increasing revenue that we could use to fund county programs and services. I do believe that the TIF has been overused in the past, and we need to be thoughtful and careful going forward.
All right, thank you, Pat. The next question, we'll start with Mike. Choose one of your main campaign planks and use a racial justice analysis to tell us how it will benefit people of color in Johnson County.
Well, one of my major campaign planks is that I'm a justice fighter. I'm a fighter for justice of all kinds, including racial justice. I sit on the board of the NAACP locally here, and I'm also on the Disproportionate Minority Contact Committee for the county. And so I'm doing everything that I can to make sure that we're not just arresting people for driving while brown or black, and that there's good reason for those people to be pulled over. We're funding some studies by the University of Iowa that will actually put numbers, give us actual data on what we're doing here locally in regards to that. I also believe that our community policing has gone a great deal towards furthering racial justice. And that community ID, where people, regardless of whether with papers or without, can get an ID that allows them to open a bank account, maybe check out a book, but they're also able to report a crime upon themselves or others without the fear of being deported, because we do community policing and we're a welcoming community. And we have found the statistics from Police Chief Jody Matherly has said that our violent crime rate has gone down 11% in the last couple of years because of the way that we do community policing and with the community IDs. So that's something that I definitely support and that I definitely fight for. And I will do everything I can to continue that fight for racial justice.
Thank you, Mike. Pat?
Greg, would you repeat
Sure.
the
Yep. Choose one of your main campaign planks and use a racial justice analysis to tell us how it would benefit people of color in Johnson County.
Wonderful, thank you. One of my campaign points is that I'm a candidate for all of Johnson County, and I absolutely believe that as we look at the criminal justice system, as we look at elected officials in the government, as we look at commissions and committees, for-profits and not-for-profits, that the Black community is represented in all of these commissions and committees. It is imperative that the police department, the sheriff department, is a reflection of our community. I was listening to just briefly the school climate result that the Iowa City Community Schools conducted for 5th to 12th graders, and the school board reviewed that last night. But something that was really very, very interesting to me, and although education isn't under the purview of the county, I think this just speaks to all the work that we need to do in that the teachers, only 6% of the teachers in the Iowa City Community School District are non-white, compared to a student population of more than 40% that was non-white. And again, that's just an example that we need to move forward and mentor and encourage the Black community to really have representation throughout the county, and then step back and be sure that they have their voice.
Thank you, Pat. Janelle?
So I had listed in my campaign stuff 6 main things that are next, and actually racial justice can be part of all of these. Racial justice is part of everything the county should do every single day, but it is clearly part of 4 of my things here. Crisis Intervention Center, more affordable housing, the next steps in truly becoming a livable community, and becoming welcoming for all. I have middle-class white privilege, and it is, and those of us who don't recognize our privilege are destined to cause trouble here. People in our community of color are have disproportionate minority contact with law enforcement. Law enforcement's disproportionately minority called on them, and we at the county recognize that. We've been funding studies on disproportionate minority contact, and it's going to be uncomfortable as the results come up. There is not a doubt about that. But I think racial justice should be part of everything we do. Even things, the county standing up with the immigrant community and the Sudanese community and the Muslim community, and the proclamation. Some people say it's just a piece of paper. Ask the communities that we've done that for, is that a piece of paper? And then when we've appeared at the rallies and protests and the marches, and I think everything we do in county government should have an eye on how this is helping people living in minority communities, and whether or not they're represented in what we're trying to do. And so it's a part of literally everything I do.
Thank you, Janelle. The next question, we'll start with Pat. Why should people who support racial justice support your candidacy?
Because my goal is to represent everyone in Johnson County, and I think that, that's just such a big piece of everything that we do. I think back to, again, being at Oak Knoll, and I think, social justice, what are the barriers? And, the racial equality, economic, I spent my entire career working with the elderly, and I think that that's a piece of that too, where we need to embrace all in this county and work towards being sure that we identify barriers that are keeping people from the quality of life, identify the barriers, and then do we need to work around, do we need to work over or under to try and get where we need to be. There are just so many issues, and I think the first part of that is acknowledging what those issues are. And as Janelle said, I have white privilege also, and the first thing in working, identifying barriers, but working to brick by brick, pulling those barriers down, is to be able to say that, to own that, to acknowledge that. And then what's most important too is then we need to lean in and have those difficult conversations and not be offended by it, but have those and listen really very carefully, and then step back and encourage everyone to have a voice and mentor that and embrace that.
Thank you, Pat. Janelle?
So I think people in the racial justice community should support my candidacy the same reason I think anyone should support it. I'm honest, I'm tough, I study hard, I'm proven, I'm liberal, I'm innovative, I'm a leader, I want to get things done, I will stand with people, I will fight with them, I will protest with them, I will march with them, I will cry with them. I don't want Johnson County to leave anyone behind, period. And I believe everything we do and every decision we make should keep in mind those that are underrepresented or those that are disenfranchised or those that no longer have a voice or those that are working 3 or 4 jobs. I am always going to stand for people who, with them and listen to them and try to get their voices at the table. I am an advocate for everyone having their own destiny, but I'm also an advocate for the system not being rigged against them. And so I think people in the racial justice community should vote for me because I will never stop fighting to make this a more caring, welcoming, and fair community for all of us.
Thank you, Janelle. Mike?
Well, my 2 opponents here have claimed white privilege, and I have to claim white middle-aged male privilege.
Straight.
Yeah, and straight, I guess. Well, we'll see about that. One thing is
breaking news.
Yeah, I have been a fighter for justice all of my life, and I'm a voice for those who are voiceless or whose voices have been marginalized. We've got some serious racial issues in this county. Some statistics that have come out about Iowa City and Johnson County have not been very flattering about disproportionate minority contact. And so there is an ugly truth there. We need to address that regardless of what it says, and then we need to move forward and admit that we have a problem and then try to fix that problem. I have been a fighter against disproportionate minority contact, and I've been a fighter for our welcoming community movement. We're not a sanctuary county, we're a welcoming county. But we will stand behind our immigrant community, we'll stand behind all of our citizens, regardless of who they are and the color of their skin, who they choose to love, or anything else. Every Johnson County resident deserves the county supervisors fighting for them. I am that fighter, and I think that I have proven results over the last 4 years. So I ask people to take a look at my record and make a decision based on that.
Thank you, Mike. The next question, we'll start with Janelle. People of color are disproportionately represented in every step of Johnson County's judicial process, from arrest to incarceration. What should the next step be for Johnson County in ending this disparity?
First of all, the county cannot do it alone. The studies the county has been funding will need city council involvement with their police forces. Johnson County Sheriff doesn't really arrest that many people. In the court system, we've done a pretty good job. They have with juvenile justice, and a lot more attention to that. And we need the same thing at the county attorney's level and the judges themselves. The good news, I think, is that a lot more people are really interested in it. When the county first started talking about this, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago, the cities were awful, kind of standoffish about it. I think there have been some new chiefs, and the new chiefs have a different attitude and are willing to do some self-reflection. And I think that's what it takes. You know, the system is flawed and the system is rigged and people are not treated the same. And so we need to understand why they're not treated the same and how is that happening. And sometimes it's because they're called to the scene. Sometimes it's not even the police department's fault. It's that people are more likely to call in when people are of color. We need to look at it without a bias and then find areas that we can start making improvements and not get bogged down in the overwhelming amount of need there is for improvements. Not be so scared that we're unwilling to do anything. If we can't fix everything when we start, we have to try to fix something. And that's what the county's done with jail alternatives. I mean, we brought it in sections, and we've made progress and progress and progress, and we're not there yet. But I think that there will be a lot more progress in the coming years, and the new chiefs are a key to that.
All right, thank you, Janelle. Mike?
Thanks, Greg. Yes, we have a disproportionate number of people within the justice system, but our whole society has a disproportionate number of people of color in it. We need our government, we need our schools, we need our public safety to more adequately reflect the proportion of society that better mirrors what society is. And so if we have X percent of people of color in a community, then public safety should have a proportionate amount as well. I'm a big fan of football, and the NFL, the National Football League, has something called the Rooney Rule. And that Rooney Rule is because about 80% of the NFL players are black, people of color, that you cannot hire a coach without making sure you interview at least one black candidate. Well, maybe we should start looking at that, that we need to interview more people of color so we hire more people of color at every level. So I'm going to look to the NFL, go Vikings, for a little bit of the answer there. And I mean, it's a real problem here, and we'll continue to have disproportionate minority contact if you don't have numbers that more adequately reflect the shades of society.
Thank you, Mike. Pat?
I think one of the most important things is to monitor what's going on, and the county is doing just that. A few months ago, there was a report on arrests, convictions, and sentencing from 2015, and obviously, as you mentioned, there is quite a disparity because. Again, so important to monitor, because if the outcome is not based on the action, for example, getting a ticket for speeding, but it's based on color or even sexual orientation or gender, we have a real problem. And it affects the livelihood of people of color, and it's something that we've got to fix. But first of all, we need to know that there's a problem, and we need to have those statistics that will guide us in trying to resolve the issue. Again, the county cannot do it alone. This will take partnerships far and wide throughout the county, our cities, our towns, our schools, the university, community college. But again, we have identified the problem, and we are anxious to move forward in that.
Thank you, Pat. The next question, we'll start with Mike. What should the Board of Supervisors' role be in creating and maintaining more affordable housing?
Great. Well, Johnson County is the best place to live in the Midwest, but it's also the most expensive place to live in Iowa. And one of the things that we tried to do was to raise the wage. Raising people's income can help them with the very high cost of living. That being taken away from us, one of the things we've done in the last 3 years is we've allocated almost $2 million towards affordable housing. We do need more housing in the community because the occupancy rate in Iowa City alone is 99%. So if we can get more housing, then maybe the market forces can at least slow down the increase in the escalation of rents in the community. We have a serious issue with affordable housing. We have a serious issue with poverty. We're close to 20% poverty rate, and that's not just affordable housing, but it's hunger, food insecurity, it's transportation issues. So I think as we continue to grow, but the disparity between the haves and the have-nots also continues to grow. I think it's the Board of Supervisors' duty to try to help those people that have kind of fallen through the cracks. And the people that we can help the most are the people that need the help the most. So I want to continue to look at our budget and see if we continue to shift some of that, those tax dollars into the people or towards the people that we can help, whether it's affordable housing, hunger, transportation for the working poor, and the like.
Thank you, Mike. Pat?
Progress has been made with affordable housing. It's just amazing to me the last couple of years what that progress has been. Having said that, we still have a long way to go. We all know that there is a connection between health and quality of life, and that affordable housing really is a basic human need, just like livable wages. I think we need to continue to educate the general public and put a face on affordable housing, and continue to collaborate with not-for-profit and for-profits and developers, and provide those incentives so that it's included in any development project that they're doing in the county. We must continue to partner with cities and towns throughout the county to obviously increase the housing stock. And I think that with any discussion about affordable housing countywide, we also need to look at a county-wide transportation system. Obviously, it always comes down to money, but I think that the two go hand in hand, and it's really important at least to engage in conversation that contains both of those areas. Want to commend the county for providing money, earmarking money, and contributing to the Housing Trust Fund, and making this a priority the last couple of years, and we'll see that it will continue to be a priority in the future.
Thank you, Pat. Janelle?
Frankly, the county struggled with our role in affordable housing. Members of the Board of Supervisors have been very passionate about affordable housing. My spouse works for Section 8 for Iowa City. I went to my first affordable housing forum here, I think 27 years ago. It's only gotten worse, not better. And so, and the county really struggled with that because frankly, the unincorporated area is the last place we should put true affordable housing. When you don't have transportation or water or sewer or access to schools or jobs or groceries. And so the county would keep putting this on an agenda and putting it on an agenda, and the cities, certain cities have resisted, other cities pretended to be on our side, and I think the county's stepping up, and Bob Welsh sitting here in the front, we were headed to $200,000, he informed me the other day. And Bob got up and said, if you can do 200, you can clearly do 600. And that's how we ended up with $600,000. So we've done 2 years of 600,000, and then this coming year we've inflationed it, and so it'll be 630,000. But I do think it's a partnership with the cities. The cities are a much better place for true affordable housing. And frankly, I think all of the cities should have inclusionary zoning. But I'm not a city council member, but I vote for people who will say that, just so you know. If they don't use inclusionary zoning, they don't get my vote. And I think we cannot focus affordable housing in one area. It has to be a county-wide effort. And I believe the county has both the bully pulpit and the financial, and then just the stubbornness to keep bringing it up on every agenda we can. And hopefully, it feels like we're turning a corner here, but so many people are moving here. Maybe what we're doing is just holding back the tidal wave and not really going to make real progress. But it feels better. This Iowa City's put substantial money up, and so I think we're moving along.
Thank you, Janelle. The next question we'll start with Pat. It's a two-parter, so if you need me to read it again, I will. All right. It says, what is your impression of the workplace climate for people of color, LGBTQ people, immigrants, religious minorities, and/or women who work for Johnson County? And the second part of that question is, what can be done to improve the workplace climate for employees who are members of historically marginalized groups?
Would you read that again?
Sure. Okay. It says, what is your impression of the workplace climate for people of color, LGBTQ people, immigrants, religious minorities, and/or women who work for Johnson County? And the second part is, what can be done to improve the workplace climate for employees who are members of historically marginalized groups?
Okay. The first part is really difficult for me to evaluate as an outsider looking in. I have been attending the council meetings or the supervisors meetings since October, and of course there are more than 500 employees throughout the county. I would hope that that the employees feel validated, that it's a safe workplace without harassment, and I would hope that if there was any concern with any of the county workers, that they would feel that they had avenues to go to as far as talking with supervisors or other bosses to alleviate whatever their problem may be in the workplace. So again, I don't, not being a part of that environment, but being an onlooker, it's really difficult for me to evaluate that. Again, I hope it would be a vibrant, supportive, respectful workplace. And how to improve, I think how to improve the workplace for marginalized employees. I think it's really important to again, not only to provide a safe workplace, except prevailing wages, wonderful benefits, retirement plans, vacation. That's all really very, very important. But I think that it's also important to mentor those people that are a bit more marginalized, and the inclusiveness and giving them opportunity to be promoted, providing development opportunities, whether it's education or increased skills. I think that as managers, that's really, really important, not only just to get the work done, but how do you create an environment, not only by what you say, but what you also do to help each individual be the best that they can be and succeed in areas that really define their working life and give them lots of opportunities.
All right, thank you, Pat. Janelle?
There's a lot of things to talk about here. One, county government suffers the same as any of the city governments. We're too white, straight, male. So we have such slim margins that if one employee leaves, our EEOC numbers are in the tank. And so we're doing everything we can to recruit diversity into our workforce. We have raised wages, we have great benefits, the reputation is the county won't hire certain people, and we have a diversity team. Diversity is now part of our job evaluations, so all department heads are evaluated on this issue. We've had tons of training, but if you look around our department head meeting, there's very little diversity there. There is diversity in elected officials in that there's 20% of the elected officials in Johnson County are lesbians. It's not hard to get there when there's only 10 of us. But recently, I'll just tell you my own frustration. We had 2 department heads, same educational requirements, same certification, different certifications, but the same amount. One managing more people and more money, and the position that's more female-oriented paid less. I couldn't get any support to change that. And that was incredibly frustrating to me. So I believe we have institutionalized discrimination in our government, and I bet everyone else does too. And we just have to keep working at this and refuse to settle for what we've been. And try to put our job applications out to more people, try to interview more people, ask people to interview a broader, make them do second round interviews even when they don't want to. I mean, if you want to diversify your workforce, it's a lot of hard work. And sometimes we need to invest in children that we're going to hire at ambulance or secondary roads or conservation in 3 or 4 years. And I'm getting the hook.
Thanks, Janelle. Mike?
Yeah, Johnson County is a pretty good place to work. We do mandate a lot of training, sensitivity. There was just recently, actually yesterday, training for gray area thinking that focused mostly on, was spoken by a woman, a trans woman. And, part of that is, I talked about earlier, is that we need to more reflect what our society is in terms of percentage of women, percentage of people of color, percentage of people that are LGBTQ, that sort of stuff. So we need to increase our diversity. We need to expand that pool of recruitment beyond the normal channels that we have been using, because whatever we're doing, it hasn't been working. And I'll go back to talking about the Rooney Rule of the NFL, and it's really not that funny. We really should mandate that when we do some interviewing, especially for department heads, that we take a look. Are we including people of color in there that are qualified? And let's just not take their resume and put it in the circular file because they have a name that's ethnic or something like that. I mean, that probably happens. That's implicit bias. We've had training against that. And so we need to be as conscious as possible and to make sure we're doing everything possible to increase our diversity within both our management and our 550 employees. And so can we do better? Yes. Do we need to do better? Yes. And we should.
Thank you, Mike. All right, it's to the point where for closing remarks, each candidate will have 1 minute for their closing remarks. We'll start with Janelle.
My name is Janelle Rettig, and I'm running for re-election because I'm not finished with my list of to-do. I do have an agenda. I've always had an agenda. My agenda is to make Johnson County the best, most livable, most welcoming, most caring community possible. I've worked really hard. I study really hard. Honesty to a fault, transparency to a fault. I'm both a combination of a social liberal and a nut about budget and balancing budgets. I'm really proud of all the liberal, progressive things the county's been doing, and we've been able to do that and to keep our levy lower than when I started, have lower debt than when I started, and have a balanced budget. That's pretty remarkable with everything that we've accomplished in the last 8 years to been able to do that. I would really appreciate your vote on or before June 5th. My website is janellerettig.com. If you have any questions, just give me a call or text or email. Thank you for having me. Thanks to the hosts and to Pat and Mike for the forum.
Thanks, Janelle. Mike?
Yeah, thanks to CityFed and the Coalition for Racial Justice for hosting this forum and all those watching in person or on television. Not only am I a Democrat making a difference, but I've also been a justice fighter all of my life. I was born a fighter. My mom and I both almost died in childbirth, and I've been a fighter ever since. I had a 15-year career as an environmental and climate change fighter by challenging the fossil fuel industry, big ag, and I won a lot of big battles. I continue to fight for justice of every kind, for economic, for social, for environmental, and racial justice. I fight for economic justice by fighting for a livable wage with inflation indexing, for affordable housing, ending homelessness, food insecurity, and transportation for the working poor. I fight for racial justice by fighting hate crimes, decreasing disproportionate minority contact, and encouraging community policing. I fight for those who don't have a voice or whose voice is marginalized. I am willing to fight the good fight for the common good. I have the courage of my convictions, and that if that gets me voted out of office, then I can live with that. You want me fighting for you, so I need you to fight for me by backing my campaign for re-election. Find out more at carberryforsupervisor.com. I humbly ask for your vote and your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Pat?
With the current political climate on the state and national levels, it is imperative that we, on the county level, do better and be better. We must be at our best. There is no room for infighting. Yes, we must be at our best for all the people we represent. It's not about taking a stand. It's not about being right above all else. It's about making a difference. Good public policy is very hard to find these days. So this is the time to set aside personal agendas and focus on problem solving. There are so many complex problems, and although immediate solutions may not be found, we must make progress. And that's what I will bring to this board. I am a strong and experienced leader, and I know our county is served best through collaboration with all of our urban and rural partners. I will facilitate cooperation, compromise, and common sense. I will provide strong fiscal management and prudent use of resources. I will encourage open and honest discussion. I will treat county staff with respect and support professional development, mentoring, and leadership opportunities. In the inspiring words of President Obama, one voice can change a room. I am that voice. I respectfully ask for your vote on or before June 5th, and it was an absolute pleasure to be here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. I think we have 3 outstanding candidates here, and there's a hard choice to make. But I have to say I respect anyone who takes time out of their busy lives and their family to run for office. I think it's a tremendous undertaking, and I respect you guys for doing that. Thank you.